Maybe. Okay, now obviously answering this question for every single unique situation is going to be impossible, and a yes or no answer isn't really going to cut it. And in fact, the real answer probably is maybe. But instead of saying and leaving it at that, what I'm going to do is go through my history using a CNC, how my experience and thoughts on them have changed over time, the workflow or skills that you'll need to operate one, and who I think a CNC could potentially be good for. Now, before I get into that, in full disclosure, I just wanted to say that in this video, you're gonna see me using an X-carve by INVENTABLES. I work with INVENTABLES, and I don't wanna talk about any specific machines in the video because I know that that could be viewed as biased. So rather, I'm gonna try to keep the discussion to just CNC routers in general and types of machines and that sort of thing. And also, I wanna say that I'm not an expert when it comes to CNC routers. If anything, I'm a woodworker who happens to incorporate them. So if you're in that category, I think there's gonna be a lot of good information in this video for you to help you make a decision if that's something you're interested in pursuing. But if you're an expert about CNC routers and you're looking for more information about that, this probably isn't the video for you, so you can go ahead and leave right now. Seriously. All right, so if you're still here, you fall into that other category, so let's hop into it. All right, so I started utilizing CNC routers long before I ever owned one. And in fact, there was a time that I debated between getting a CNC or getting quote unquote traditional woodworking tools. You know, joiner, planer, bandsaw, table saw, etc., the works. And that's because I kind of viewed the decision as an either or situation. And honestly, it kind of was at the time. I was in a 2-car garage, I didn't have any tools at the time, and I was designing things that could be built either using CNCs or using the traditional tools. I had the space and the amount of money that I could basically either get those tools or build my own CNC, but I couldn't do both. And that either or sort of mindset, I think, translated directly into the things that I was designing. Here's a good example. So here are 2 coffee tables that I designed and built very early in my woodworking career. As you can see, they're pretty similar in their overall aesthetic, but the method for creating them is totally different. This one here uses traditional tools and joinery, whereas this one is designed to be flat packed and comes together kind of like a puzzle without any glue or hardware. Now, as it turned out, I got to kind of go both routes because I ended up buying all of the traditional tools, and then I found a local sign shop that I could outsource my CNC work to. So that's what I ended up doing for several years, and it worked out fine for that time. I was able to build my custom orders and outsource the CNC work so I could still sell the flat pack furniture. And really the only downside was that the minimum order from the sign shop deterred me from really trying more experimental things with the CNC and just kind of left me only doing the thing that I had been doing. So flash forward a few years, new companies pop up like INVENTABLES and 3D Carbide, and I'm able to get my hands on an X-carve. And to me, those are the types of machines that a person like me, either then or now, is probably gonna realistically be considering. And the way I see it, I think there are kind of 3 categories of machines. First is the aforementioned, which is typically aimed at maybe a hobbyist or maybe a custom furniture maker that wants to try implementing digital fabrication on a limited basis, or maybe somebody who wants to make signs. Next would be the sort of in-between machines that might start at, I don't know, $4,000 or $5,000 and would be for somebody who maybe needs a little bit more speed in terms of production because they're doing more production, but they don't need the large scale for what would be the next category, which I guess would be, you know, a big, full-blown, large industrial machine meant for full-scale production. Now, I've never personally used categories 2 or 3, and realistically, if you're, just dipping your toe into the world of CNCs, you're probably not in a position where you're going to be plunking down $5,000 to $15,000 on a machine, and that kind of leaves you with category 1, and here you are. Something relatively capable, but with a price tag that somebody who is in a position like I was in or am in could take a chance on. And what I will say is that when I finally did get my hands on my own CNC, you can still see that old mindset was pretty firmly implanted in my brain. That kind of either or mindset, traditional CNC. And I don't think you really need to look any further than my first couple of projects that I put out, videos, after I got my CNC. So for example, there's this side table that I made on the X-carve, which is basically just a scaled down version of the coffee table. Or these modular planners, again, made entirely on the X-carve. And that kind of takes us to where we are now. So after years of living with and using a CNC, I now view it more through the lens of just another tool in the workshop. Even the piece that I'm building as the sort of backdrop to this video, the literal push shoes, if you will, technically could be built entirely on the CNC, but they weren't. And that's simply due to the fact that I think the workflow is a little bit quicker if I use my X-carve for the precision work and then use my traditional tools for the areas where I don't need that precision. But to expand beyond that, the main place that I find myself using the X-carve over and over these days, and where I would absolutely recommend one to anybody who wants to make furniture, is for making templates. So many of my pieces are simplified through the use of templates. And while you can certainly make templates by hand, and in fact I still do from time to time for video's sake, the truth is the CNC is better at making them and as fast, if not faster. And another area where I feel like I've really expanded on my use of the CNC more recently is in what I would call experimental projects. So those would be things like the epoxy locking joint video I recently did, or maybe the headphone stand, or even the shoe rack, where both required creating lots of forms. And again, using the precision of a CNC to create that initial form and then duplicating it with a pattern bit on a traditional router is really beneficial. Okay, so at this point, maybe you're thinking a CNC could be for you, but you're worried what you might need to know software-wise in order to use one. And I'm sure that there's a million different answers out there, but I'm gonna talk about the things that I have experience with, 3 in particular. So let's just jump right into that now. So the first and I guess simplest would be something like Easel. And this is the web-based software, aka free, that the X-carve runs off of. Now, I use Easel as an interface for every project that I do, but I rarely use it as a design tool. And I think that's good and bad. But essentially, I would say it's good for relatively simplistic design tasks. So one example could be these dispenser boxes that I made a few years back, where I'm essentially just making a top or front to a box that's a specific size and where I want some kind of circle or slot routed in at a particular place. Another similar example could be the insert that I made for the hidden wireless charger plate for the nightstand that I made last year. Another type of software that you might use to create more complex paths would be something like Adobe Illustrator or really anything vector-based. And there are plenty of cheaper and probably even free alternatives to Illustrator, but that's what I use. And the times that I use Illustrator are for projects like these push shoes, where I'm basically drawing something that I want to cut out. And if I'm being honest, this is probably the workflow that I'm least comfortable with, just because I'm far from an expert. So basically I don't work in the most efficient way possible, and I usually end up with some duplicate lines, and well, basically I just try to work as cleanly as possible, and while I may not be the best at it, it usually gets the job done. So moving on to the workflow that I use the most, that would be exporting directly from my modeling software. And I use SketchUp, which you can export SVGs from. And I can't speak for every modeling software, but I'm sure most make it possible with varying degrees of difficulty. And for my money and my personal workflow, this is the most natural, but I realize that I might be different because I'm the type of person who models every build pretty painstakingly before I ever even cut a piece of wood. So for example, here's a model for a piece that I'm working on at the moment. The video should be out soon. And because I've got everything built to full scale, I can isolate the piece that I want to create a template for, export it out, import it into easel, and cut away. Easy peasy. Okay, so this is kind of the big question that we've been working towards, and hopefully everything that I've been yammering on about has helped kind of drive you towards what that decision would be for yourself. But because I want to give a definitive answer, should you get a CNC? Yeah, I suppose at the end of the day, if you've got the money for it and you have interest in it, then yeah, you should. I think it's something that can fit into a lot of different workflows. There are definitely times that it can do things a lot better than a human can. There are times that it can do things faster than a human can. And there's times when you can have it kind of doing busy work while you're multitasking and doing something else. So it's kind of like having a really precise doppelganger. That said, I'd be remiss if I didn't also say that CNCs are not some magical tool that allow you to do everything and anything instantly. And just like any other tool or instrument, pretty much its potential is limited by its operator. So basically, don't just expect that you're gonna get it into your shop, take it out of the box, hit the start button, and come back 3 hours later to some kind of masterpiece, because you won't. But just like any other tool, the more you use it, the more comfortable you'll get around it, and the better your skills will become, and the better the outcomes will become. So that's it. Those are my thoughts, and hopefully that helps you make a decision.
Don't do it. Don't you do it.
See you later.